going on, everybody? Welcome to the first official episode of Chair Shot Chatter. We've been back for a couple of weeks now doing wrestling content. And joining me tonight, he is the man, myth, legend behind the Dark Match Drive. Yeah, what's going on, dude?
Just trying to collect all the news after a very eventful Monday Night Raw last night and a not very eventful NXT tonight, apparently. I haven't heard anything about it. So, no, I'm doing pretty good. Had some requests for some content on the drive, so I've been working on that lately. Some very early AJ Styles stuff. So, if that's your thing, hit me up.
Now, how early is very early AJ Styles stuff? Early AJ Styles to me was watching him when he was young in TNA when it would come on when I'm late at night. I'm guessing this is way before that.
Pretty well, yes and no. Probably earlier than you were watching, but very early AJ in TNA.
Now, did he?
That's not early AJ.
Oh, he'd only been around 2.5 years before that.
Early AJ is like 98. Pre-WCW AJ is early AJ.
Yeah,
that's right, WCW AJ. That's early AJ.
AJ was around in 98?
Yeah, he started in 98 and then kicked up steam throughout 99 and 2000.
You want to hear a fact that will blow your mind? Chris Daniels has been around since 93.
If you haven't figured it out yet, Fairweather wrestling fan and the two wrestling nuts. So those are the guys to listen to, and I'm the guys that'll just bounce random questions and ideas off them and give my 2 cents. Also joining us, he is the man behind the Bros Before Pros Twitch channel. Johnny, what's going on, man?
Oh, not much of anything.
We getting video game news tomorrow? You do the video game channel. Is the video game news coming tomorrow?
Video game news. I'm not expecting any.
I heard we might get Fight Forever news tomorrow. I don't know if it's actually going to happen, but...
Oh, at this point, I have no idea what to expect on that front. At this point, I'm expecting like there's going to be a random Dynamite one week where Tony will have a big announcement and it's Fight Forever releases tomorrow. Because that seems like the Tony Khan thing to do.
I've watched basically the last month or so, but I've always been like doing work at the same time. Have they been advertising the video game at all the last month or so? Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're still doing like the lower thirds on Dynamite and Rampage.
Okay. Interesting.
They filmed commercials for this thing, and they can't add a release date at the end of it. Like, it's ridiculous.
I personally, I'd rather that. I would rather just be like, I would much rather them continue we're working on it. Here's some progress. Here's where we're at. Look at what it looks like right now, and it'll be ready when it's ready. Because if there's one thing I've gotten to, is like people are so into this video game release cycle is 1 year. It's not. It really isn't. 1 year is not enough time to put out a new product. Like if you're just slapping a fresh paint of code on a Madden game, sure, a year is plenty of time to do nothing. But if you're building a game from the ground up, it's going to take, 4 or 5 years. And we're finally just getting into that window now.
Why announce it, though? Like,
just to know that it's being worked on, because, let's be honest.
Yeah, but we're getting like trailers and commercials and like that's stuff you do when the promotional cycle is going and you have a date in mind and like... It just feels weird. Like
it's not though, because like the announcement usually always comes with like alpha footage, which is what we got. Like we haven't. I don't even think any of the stuff has been final game engine footage yet that we've seen, and we've seen a lot of footage.
So, and I did not hear this from a wrestling place. Heard from a guy named Rob. He's an artist. Has worked on games, does stuff like that. And it was his belief that the game should have been out by now. Like originally what they had planned, the game would be out by now. And that it was a collective decision to take a big step back, and try to correct as much as they could before the release. If that is what actually happened, I know we didn't intend to talk video game stuff here today, but if that's what actually happened, then I got to give them credit, because there's way too many fucking companies that just, here's your movie, here's your video game. it's kind of done. You just spent like $105 on it, but we'll get around to fixing it maybe kind of one day. If that's the decision they made, then kudos to them.
That's the thing. Most people are treating this like a yearly based title. They're not. They're treating this like a live service title. And live service titles are very hit or miss. You know, you either strike on something that lasts a very long time, like a Destiny, or even the Division 2 is still kicking around as a live service title. There aren't that many that survive.
It was so much better than the second game. I know that's a whole other thing we could do on a different episode, but
that's for a Phantom Empire roundtable, not chair shot chatter. But like, you know, wrestling's never done a live service game. Like, you know, we get the yearly title with, you know, 4 or 5 DLC packs, and that's it. You know, but a live service where you can adapt the roster as the roster changes, I'm here for that. You know.
By the way, if you guys have any wrestling questions at all, if you're part of the live chat, not all these will be live. I imagine some of them will be recorded, but pop them in, and we will take a look at the live chat. It can be about anything. Remember, primary focus on this show is AEW, but we will touch on WWE stuff, and there's WWE stuff to touch on tonight. So without further ado, Jer, you were the first person to reach out to me about this. I had just so happened, like, my way of noticing that this had happened was really fucking weird because, like, I'm out and I was doing, what was I doing? Pokemon. I was playing Pokemon Go with Jensen. You know, he's just getting into the Pokemon stuff. So I'm walking him around and we're looking at the screen and, like, the Fightful thing pops up on my phone and he's getting mad at it. And it's like, CM Punk backstage at Raw. And I just scrolled, like, off of it. And then I was like, wait, what? And it's, what the hell happened?
Okay, so Punk was in Florida over the weekend for some, I don't know, UFC offshoot thing, I
guess. His BCCF show was in Tampa this week.
Yeah, so he does the commentary and stuff for the side shows for the Fight Pass stuff, I guess. And so Raw happened to be in Chicago on Monday, and a lot of the WWE talent lives in Florida. So obviously, you know, Punk flying home Monday is going to more than likely run into some talent. And it turns out he ended up on the plane with some talent, and he asked, hey, is it cool if I come hang out at Raw? You know,
I read they invited him.
Did they?
I read it that it was them that invited him to come and hang out.
Okay.
Last update I seen too.
Yeah. Okay. So Punk goes to Raw, and he's being social with Bobby Lashley and was it Tamina, the other one? I think
that was one of the names.
Yeah, and apparently he buried the hatchet with The Miz. Had a chat with him because, as we know, Punk has not spoken favorably of The Miz over the past, decade, and so they kind of buried the hatchet there, and that led to Punk speaking with Triple H, and he basically said, "Hey, is it cool if I, hang out back here? What clearance do you need to get from me for me to be here?" Basically, and Triple H said, "Okay, well, let me talk to Vince.
Let me run it past the big guy."
Yeah, exactly.
Quoted as saying.
And he came back, and Vince basically said, "No, I don't want him there." And security asked Punk to leave, and Punk was very, very cool about it. Hey, I get it. And so Punk went home. So Punk's, hung out at Raw for, I guess 20 minutes to half an hour yesterday. And the internet blew up.
I mean, there's things to overreact to. I think people have a right to be kind of like, what the fuck?
Well,
got out there. I mean, he wasn't going to end up on Raw unless someone wanted a lawsuit.
Exactly. Like Meltzer reported that there were ideas that Punk was, feeling out. WWE wanted him back, kind of thing, and going down that route, and it just feels like there's too much momentum in the opposite direction. Punk more than likely was just gonna go see some friends, and that's that. I don't think Punk was, sending out feelers to. There was discussion over the past 8 months of Punk coming in. But obviously they didn't go anywhere, and Punk smoothed things over with AEW. But I don't think there's much smoke to the fire of Punk going there with the idea of, hey, I'd like to work here again. I think Punk, Rovert on Twitter, who's very hit or miss, but I think he may have had a point with this. He pointed out that Punk feels like he's been through therapy the last 8 months. He's trying to smooth over a lot of his grudges. He's trying to make peace with people. He's trying to be a different person than he's justifiably known for, and we don't know if Punk is doing that, and if he is, all the best to him, but it feels like Punk is trying to mend fences with a lot of people, and going to Raw obviously had to happen for him to do some of that, so I don't think he's the kind of guy who's going to look around for the Miz's phone number.
So the last thing I seen Fightful put out, and this was for people that sign up for their Patreon, which is worth it. They do put a lot of content over there on Patreon.
Yeah, $5 a month. Yeah, definitely worth it.
Like I'm just recent over there, and I'm stunned with how much they put out. So kudos to them and their team over there. But the last thing that I saw was Sean Ross Sapp had mentioned that he thought the conversation Punk had with Triple H was longer than the conversation that he had with The Miz. But someone tried passing it off as they went into like closed doors or whatever, and basically everybody cleared it. No, they were completely in the public, visible to everybody that was around the common area, if you will.
That's insane to go behind closed doors, right? Like that's begging for a tampering lawsuit, you'd think.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think there's any, like, would it look better if he was there because his wife worked there? Yeah, obviously, but he didn't do anything wrong. But you can't tell me that a dude as smart as Punk doesn't know the media attention that was going to get. Someone was going to say something somewhere. And because of that, and I haven't seen anyone say otherwise yet, I would not be surprised if he ran it by Tony Khan first, given all the wound healing that's apparently been trying to go on. But as someone who has been through some therapy, I can truthfully say burying your past demons or whatever you're dealing with is literally a step in the road to recovery. And my God, I don't know what, his half an hour got him there, but like that, if that's the reason, then kudos to him. And I hope that he can make that work at his current employer too.
I would imagine he probably texted Tony Khan while on the plane and being like, hey, I got invited to go hang out and see some guys at Raw. I'm obviously not going to appear on camera. And I think Tony Khan he's been fine with talent appearing on camera. Malachi Black and Buddy Matthews were at the Hall of Fame and they were on camera. And so I think there's an understanding. And if Punk wanted to, and Punk probably said, hey, I'm going to go talk to, The Miz or Hunter and try and, work some stuff out. And I would imagine Tony Khan being highly supportive of that because Punk's his guy, not in a bad way, but like I think Tony Khan feels he's friends with Punk, and
yeah,
why would you not want to support that, right?
I hope on a personal level, I know you want to get in here, Johnny. I just if that's the reason for this, and it's not just a publicity stunt, although it definitely got them publicity. I hope it was euphoric for him. I can't imagine you can be the biggest celebrity you want. I'm sure the second his and Paul Levesque, Triple H's eyes lock onto one another yesterday, there's some sort of emotion there from both of them. Not necessarily a good one, but there's some. So I hope I hope it was good. Johnny, any thoughts on this one before we?
I mean, it's just, the only thing I add to what Jared said is that you left out the reported request for 2 minutes with Hunter behind closed doors. Punk did ask to speak to Hunter privately for a couple of minutes. Again, this is just, obviously this is second, third, fourth hand, but that's what's out there. And nobody has refuted that, which makes sense, because if you're going to, have a sort of a more heartfelt moment with the guy, you want it to be private. You don't want to do it in front of everybody, because that is, it's a private moment between two dudes who have, a hatchet to bury in history with each other. And that's, perfectly logical and, 100% copacetic, as long as the important thing is that, it was transparent on all fronts. If he did shoot that text off to Tony and be like, I got invited to the guys at Raw, do you got a problem if I go? And I like Jared said, I don't think Tony's the kind of guy who's going to be like, no, you absolutely cannot do that. Because if there's one thing, like if we look at Dax and his, reporting of, renegotiating with AEW, he made it very clear that, to Tony, he's a human being. He is, I can't think of his actual name at the moment, but, he's that individual, not just employee number 16759, like he always felt in the WWE. And that's a huge difference, when you have sort of that, WWE is a more corporate environment and AEW is more of, the almost territorial feel, where the locker room is close knit and, the ties are familial and friendly and extend beyond, the business of pro wrestling. Because I mean, look at Santana, not Santana, Ortiz. No, Santana, not Ortiz. And his injury, Tony could have cut bait on his contract 6-8 months ago because he's injured, which, is something that has happened many times in New York, and he didn't. He kept paying him, and, he's, as far as we know, still under contract. Obviously, the way he's handled Brody Lee's family is just, second to none. So, I mean, there's that. I mean, I'll point out the irony in this, though, is that 9 years. 9 years seems to be the length of time that a major feud will last between a person and the WWE. Because it was 9 years for Brett, and it was 9 years for Punk.
Warrior was a little longer.
Well, I mean, that was the third time Warrior broke up with the company.
That's true.
That was more of a 3 strikes, you're out.
Not to mention, Punk wasn't going to go up there. Like, it's well publicized at this point what's about to happen with AEW, the new show, all the money coming in, the apparently massive deal that it sounds like. I think they're hoping to announce it at the upfronts, but of all of AEW's content, possibly Ring of Honor's content going to WBD. There's a ton of money on the line, and you even had the Wrestling Observer of all places, who's not very high on Punk, going, hey, he is a massive part of why this new show is happening and the time slot it's happening in and how long they're getting it for. He's not going to throw all the, there's a lot of people trying to spin, sabotage this and screw job that. It's like, no, maybe the dude legitimately, he's got to know that it's going to attract attention, but hey, maybe he got some healing done. Maybe that will help. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you are the problem. I've been in that place. It happens to everybody, I think. Absolutely. Anyways, we haven't gotten Johnny's thoughts on this, so I do want to get it quickly before we move on to our next topic. Okay. Just your thoughts on Punk and the Collision thing, and are you shocked AEW is getting another A show in a 2-hour time slot? And do you like wrestling on a Saturday night? I'm stoked for it, although I understand the uphill battles.
I grew up on wrestling on a Saturday night. I grew up at 6:05 TBS. WCW Saturday night. That was for me. That was it. I can remember the intro. I remember all of the eras of Saturday night. I remember growing up as a kid.
Stage.
I remember as a kid, watching it in the studio in Atlanta and, seeing that environment with Jim Ross and Paul E. Dangerously and Tony Schiavone. And then you move to the, the Bischoff era at Disney with the rotating stage in the ring and all of that crazy shenanigans. And then they did like the creator wrestler entrance in like 96. And I remember all the eras of Saturday Night all the way to the end when it became the worst professional wrestling show in existence. But
I take umbrage with that comment.
Jimmy
Hart was a great booker.
It had some decent matches, but it was a terrible show.
Don't you talk shit about Horseshoe. Hole-in-One Barry Darsow has something to say to you, buddy.
I was not expecting a Luther Reigns reference. Caught me off there.
I'm gonna have to find
to the two people in the chat who actually know Horseshoe is Luther Reigns. Kudos to you. But
deep cut.
You know, I grew up on 605. You know, like there's the nostalgia effect for me, and I was really hoping when this was first announced, it was like they're gonna do the Legacy time slot. They're gonna do 605 Saturday night. I was hyped for that. I was more excited for 605 Saturday night than I am for 8 to 10 or 9 to 11, wherever this thing ends up, because it's what I grew up on. It's what brought me into wrestling. You know, I was weird in that fact. I was always more WCW than WWF growing up. You know, it's what I enjoyed.
I remember being at your place for more WCW pay-per-views.
Yeah.
WWF.
I mean, hell, I can remember the weather the night Hogan turned heel and dropped the leg on Savage. There was a thunderstorm for Bash the Beach 96. Well,
it was. I lost the first 15 minutes of the pay-per-view because of it.
You know, it's a great, you know, like those moments are indelled in you. And let's be honest, as a 10-year-old, I wasn't ready for the Attitude Era. You know, by the time of the end of the Attitude Era came, when I was like, 12, 13 years old, great. You know, tell your friends to suck it. It's cool. It's awesome. But 98, I didn't care for that. So I was WCW guy through the Attitude Era. You know, I lived through the Vince Russo days and I regret it greatly. But I was there, you know, and that nostalgia was what it was for me. And I was hyped for it. I love it. They can definitely support it. The roster is huge enough. There's far too many guys that on a week-to-week basis we're like, where's this guy? Where's that guy? You know, guys disappearing for a month while they get cycled through. I think it's better for them now getting the second, TV show where they can have those guys.
The guys to get like, oh, hey, this guy got 8 minutes of TV in 2 weeks. And it's like,
exactly.
You know, it's, I think
What's
it's
up, Wardlow?
Yeah.
Can we not talk about that guy?
But the whole Punk and the Elite thing, I'm not saying it's a bad idea in terms of being able to keep them separate for a bit, but eventually you got to cross that, not necessarily to work together, but you got to be able to be in the same place at some point in time, because guess what? There's a heck of a lot of specials and pay-per-views coming up where guess who's going to be on the card as if everybody's healthy.
They're all going to be thrown in a London dungeon after brawling in 4 months.
It's a Band-Aid on a bullet wound to a certain degree, you know, and you can put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound as long as you then go immediately to the hospital to get said bullet wound treated by a medical professional. But you can't leave a Band-Aid on a bullet wound and expect to survive from just that, you know, and can they survive from this? Yes. Is it as simple as, if Punk has sort of, looked inside himself and realized that sometimes I am an asshole and I probably deserve to get punched in the face that night, then, everybody can sort of have that, mea culpa, I fucked up, you fucked up, and let's move forward. Everybody can have that, by sitting in a locker room together and, having that, I was wrong, you were wrong, let's move on, If they can do that, great. But it's not going to work long term if you keep them all segregated and sort of create that locker room divide long term. Like they did a good job sort of separating the problem from the locker room right away. They took the problem out of the locker room immediately afterwards by sending, obviously Punk went home for his injury and, and suspending the Elite for, what was it, 2 months they were off TV?
Which, by the way, just so happens to be the amount of time that will have passed when Punk returns and when he was actually fully healed. So I don't know if I wouldn't be surprised if he's not getting paid during these 2 months as a way to make it fair.
I mean, I don't know, because we don't know how the pay went for them during their suspension? Because let's be honest, all of those guys still hold corporate positions. They hold office jobs.
What made the whole fucking situation all that much worse? So
it absolutely did. But at the same time, if there's one thing I'll look back and say that they did is that the Bucks accepted it. They accepted their wrongdoing immediately. There wasn't a huge we didn't do anything wrong. Were there some people who took that stage? Yes, but it was never them. Even if it was sort of a proxy fight through others, we don't know, and we'll never know.
Just get Brandon Cutler to shut up, and everybody will be good. So,
sometimes Brandon does talk too much. I'll say that.
Yeah. Let me turn this. We were just talking about Saturdays, and one of the big sticking points for this show that we were doing, episode number 1 of Chair Shot Chatter, was how, before yesterday happened, was how can they make AEW Collision feel different than AEW Dynamite? Whether it's who books it, or I'm more so talking the presentation we see on TV. Because I would hope they're not just going to run out the same colors, same ropes, exact same setup that they have for Dynamite. That would be kind of pointless in branding another show. Not to mention, I really don't fucking like the rebranding of Dynamite. So that's just me, but I can't stand the colors whatsoever.
I mean,
I don't.
Go ahead.
First.
How Canadian?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. You go. No, I'm sorry. You go. That's the show, ladies and gentlemen. Good night.
We'd be stuck in a door forever.
Oh, we would.
Jared, go ahead.
I'm drinking. You go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, that's the interesting thing, because I know you hate the Dynamite color scheme and whatnot. So it makes me wonder if they will change that much visually, because when they tape Ring of Honor around Dynamite, they don't even change the ropes for that. I mean, like, it's still the same.
People are complaining about, apparently. So not that I'm but that's apparently a massive complaint.
Yeah, because it's not, that, hey, you're just watching stuff that's around Dynamite rather than watching an authentic Ring of Honor show. I mean, thankfully they're going back and taping at Universal Studios in the next couple weeks, I think. So we'll get more, authentic Ring of Honor stuff. But it just, and that's the weird thing, because even WWE will change the ropes, they'll change the mat, they have guys that will go in and just, the team is so quick that they will just change everything within 10 minutes, and you get a completely different show. Like they would do it for Main Event. And the fact that AEW doesn't do that is, I don't know, it makes me wonder that they might just put a logo on Collision and not change the set, which, I mean, okay, the set's whatever, that's fine, it's just video screens. But I mean, the color scheme, and just you have to feel like you're watching a different show. And I don't know if, judging from what they've done with Ring of Honor, I don't know if they're gonna do that. Hopefully they do, but
it just screams laziness for them to not do the ropes for Ring of Honor. And like, I feel for the diehard, I'm not one of them, but I feel for the diehard Ring of Honor fans. But like, for me, I like colors is the big thing, right? Like, there's only so much you can do with a stage. They've already invested quite a bit of money in their new setup, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's just like repositioning some of that stuff. But colors would be the big thing for me. Johnny, how about you?
It's hard, because we sort of reached this point in like the early 2000s where everything became different. I guess with the dawn of SmackDown, things became different. The SmackDown set was vastly different from the Raw set. The look was vastly different. The feel was vastly different. But if we look sort of before that, I mean, I guess really it was Thunder that instituted that change, because it was a year before SmackDown. But before that, the changes weren't that big between shows. They all looked the same. in part because they were filmed at the same time. And I don't like, as far as Ring of Honor goes, that's a completely different company entity. I think you have to make those changes. Even if you're taping after Dynamite, you have to change those ropes because Ring of Honor doesn't use the same color ropes as AEW. That's the difference. But, like the rope color from Dynamite to Collision, I'm okay if they keep the same rope colors. I'm okay if they keep the same basic, turnbuckles, or not turnbuckles, because I guess it would be, I don't know, because we don't know which network this is going to end up on. So, obviously you'd have the difference there, but you'd still have the AEW buckles. You'd still have, the turnbuckle posts would probably be the same because I don't think there's really much branding there, or at least none that I've really noticed. Like, they're just the plain black posts. I don't like the rope color. I don't mind if it's the same because that's sort of a universal of the company. I don't mind that. But like the branding of the show itself needs to be, I don't know, like, even if it's just something as simple as inverting the colors, that makes a difference. Like you have the company colors, and let's be honest, they're kind of stuck in that. It's white and gold. There's not a whole lot of variety to play with in there, whereas the WWF always and WWE always had more colors that they would play with. They'd have their reds, their whites, their blues of the ropes that they'd play with in the logos as well. But the actual company logo was always relatively, monochromatic. It's the same colors throughout its entity. That I think just a basic color swap is okay. Like Dynamite is more about that like explosion. Like if you look at the classic Dynamite, yes, they changed it with the the rebranding earlier this year, where it sort of became more cinematic, I guess might be the descriptor I'd use for it, where it became more Hollywood-esque with its like almost projection-y look and feel. That there's definitely room to do something different, but you don't want it to be so vastly different that someone flipping through the channels who isn't a diehard who knows the schedule, you want someone to flip through it and immediately go, oh, it's AEW. You don't want it to be so vastly different that someone could flip right past it and just be like, eh. You need it to stand out and be uniquely AEW. And if that's, the ropes or just the stage being the same, but you need something different. And the logos are where you do it. The actual logos and graphics and that packaging for the show can be different, and you can play with that with the colors and making it all different there, but you still are sort of limited with your color palette, I guess. That there isn't a whole lot of room to play there, but they are very creative. They are very good graphically, that I think they can do something that will feel different to Dynamite while still feeling the same. You know what I mean? Like it'll be uniquely different, which is impossible because those two words are, their meanings make it impossible for that to actually be a thing. But the show will still be uniquely AEW while being uniquely Collision, if that makes sense.
I think them going with a, the just traditional black and gold, with a bit of white look like Dynamite had before, the black ropes, and you had some gold on the apron with the logo and stuff. Going back to something like that makes sense. I would say black and red, but like that's Ring of Honor, and you still intend to do stuff with that, and maybe black and blue, but I don't know. To me, going back to the AEW colors would make sense for the show. So, anybody else think of anything else they could do? To make the show feel different before we move on to Jer leading the way on a rant against Jungle Boy.
I mean, the differences in Dynamite and Collision, I think one way that they can do that is a different, and it makes a big difference, is the commentary team. That is one area where AEW has uniquely gone through more commentary tandems and teams in 4 years than the WWE has gone through in 20. And they found something that works. The Taz, Excalibur, Tony team, I did not expect to be good, and they have come together in a very awesome way. I don't know, who you can go with there that you have on Brandon, if without tampering with the product. Like, I don't want to see Ian Riccaboni on Collision. He is Ring of Honor, and
JR?
I don't know how much you want to use. Like, I like JR being brought out for the big moments because it adds sort of that big moment feel. Like when JR comes out, that in his own phrasing, business is about to pick up. And I'm okay with that. Saving JR for the main events and the big moments, I'm okay with that because that's where he's uniquely suited. He is the voice of a generation. He is the voice of professional wrestling for most people who watch wrestling today. He's the voice they grew up on, and you either grew up on him or you grew up on Tony. So either way, you have the voice of our childhood, wherever you were. So I think one of the guys is Nigel McGuinness. I think you need to put him on that booth as sort of the Excalibur for the Collision show. That voice who is, uniquely pro wrestling. And he has that amazing accent, which I love to hear. And he encapsulates that, that vibrant love of pro wrestling that Excalibur brings to the table. And it allows you to play into the rumors of the day that Nigel is planning to lace him up at All Out, which makes a lot of sense. He's been teasing around that for a long time that, he might have one more left in him. And I think if he's going to do it, it's in front of 65,000 people 65,000 of his comrades in arms in England. And I think that makes perfect sense. It's a great farewell for a career that never had one. And if he wants to lace him up one more time and get in there with somebody, I am all for that match. Who? Give me Danielson, Nigel one more time, and Zack Sabre can sit at home. For all I
Nigel
care.
to survive the match, so just put him in there.
But let's be honest, though, if there's anyone
Darby
who
can
can
bump around for
that,
the entire match.
No, I don't want Darby
Nigel
on anywhere.
Doesn't have to bump at all. It's perfect.
I think Brian is safe enough that he can make a match that is them without actually breaking Nigel's brain.
Nigel walks by a ring post and has post-traumatic stress disorder.
Well, we'll just have to keep it inside the ring then. But it's just there's a lot to. I think Nigel is probably the guy you want as your color guy. Your announcer, I think that probably stays as Tony. I think that's his role. He's found his love of the business again, and is much the better for it. We have a more late 80s, early 90s Tony Schiavone now than we saw through the entirety of the peak WCW period. This is the Tony Schiavone I grew up listening to, not the Tony Schiavone I listened to as a teenager and, in my adolescent years. This is the Tony I grew up listening to in like 91, 92, 93 when he loved the business still.
Yeah, like Tony is probably my favorite main event commentator right now out of everyone because he's just so... You can tell he's a fan of what he's watching. So he's like right there with you as you're watching it. And he's reacting the same way you are. Like this unbelievable world title match or whatever. And people can relate to that. And I think that's a really good quality for a lead commentator. So
he had that. He also has that bonus. He also has that bonus of having left the business for 15 years or however long it was. Where he went off and did. He was one of the voices for the Georgia Bulldogs football team for a long time, and he worked for the Atlanta Braves as the lead announcer for their AAA baseball club. For a lot of years. So he went out and did other sports at an elite level. You don't get to be the voice of the Georgia Bulldogs, one of the top programs in collegiate football. You don't get to work in that booth if you're not damn good at your job. That is a dream job for a lot of people. And he walked away from that to come back to wrestling. That says a lot,
We'll have to see what happens here. We're less than a month away from the show being announced and like 7 weeks away from the first episode. So I think in time we'll find out more. It does sound like instead of it being the worst kept secret thing that they're just going to come out and announce this at the upfront. So it'd be interesting to see.
It's always where they've done it. I don't think they've ever not announced the show at the upfronts, have they?
Oh, I meant the Punk portion of it apparently is going to be announced.
Well, in general, I mean, it makes sense to do that there, though.
Yeah. Jungle Boy. Yeah. Let's hear it.
Okay. I was a huge Jungle Boy fan for a long time. I thought the stuff with Christian, the stuff with Luchasaurus doing the double turn, and just it was a really, really well booked angle. And finally, Christian was healthy enough, and they can do the blow off. Great. Jungle Boy gets his win over Christian. He can move up the card, and he's in the spot, but it just feels like he doesn't have it. He's getting outclassed by guys like Darby and Sammy. And I mean, the one thing that stood out on Dynamite last week was you had Sammy and Darby and Jungle Boy in there, shooting on each other with their promo. And then MJF's music hits and the crowd loses it because they felt like, oh, hey, here's a real star. He's going to bring the segment up. Here comes MJF. He knows what he's doing. These three kids are just, talking to each other. We don't take them seriously. And I think Jungle Boy exemplifies that because he's over. And I commented on this last week. I legitimately think Jungle Boy is over at least 23% because of his theme song. But it just feels like he's missing that it. And I don't know what they can do to make him a believable top guy. He sounds like a 17-year-old kid who's trying to insult you bad enough that it hurts. And I can't take him seriously because of it. At least Sammy has credibility and Darby has credibility because they've done stuff. I mean, Jungle Boy is a former tag champ, sure. But, I mean, Darby and Sammy regularly main event shows. Maybe not pay-per-views, but they're regular TV main event guys. Sammy and Cody, Darby and the Firm or whatever those guys are doing. But, it just feels like Jungle Boy, he got elevated with Christian, but he's just not there yet for me. And I don't know if this angle, I mean, he looks like a goober now because of what happened on Wednesday, because the heat is on MJF for costing Jungle Boy the match. Okay. If Jungle Boy is out of this tournament, how is he going to get his heat back? How is he going to get any revenge on MJF? Because they've got Darby and Sammy in the finals, and Jungle Boy is left out to dry unless they, flip the script and do a four-way, which everyone thought was going to happen, and then they did the tournament, and now, I mean, they're not going to main event a pay-per-view with Sammy and MJF, are they? No offense to
they better not
Sammy.
Event the pay-per-view with any of those guys one-on-one with MJF personally, but
that's the thing, right? The four-way you can see, okay, there's enough star power there with the four of them. Not a single one of those guys is, it's not hitting the way it should. And MJF is outclassing everyone to a serious degree.
So let me follow that up with this, because I thought you were going to be a little, the way you worded it to me is I thought you were going to be a little more harsh than you actually were there. So you were pretty.
I want Jungle Boy to be good and over and be a top guy.
Okay. So I think the guy is fucking abysmal. Not his athletic talent. I wish I fucking could do half of a tenth of what he can do.
It'd be a 20th.
Super gifted. Never mind. I'm not going to say that. That's just going to get me in trouble. The dude's super talented in the ring, to an extent, anyways. But there's no fucking promo presence or mic presence whatsoever, and it's somewhat baffling given who his dad was, and like, my God, Johnny and I went to school with people that had twice as much charisma and they never fucking talked. So, like, sorry, but like, I'm sitting there, I'm like, this, like, and I don't even think Darby Allin's a good talker. Like, I think Darby Allin is a bad talker. And I thought to myself, wow, Darby sounds way better than Jungle Boy. Uh-oh. And Jungle Boy is apparently one of those guys that doesn't like to take advice from people. So it's like, and we're not the only show to talk about this week. This is like the third time I've heard someone go off about this segment. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm not saying the dude isn't talented. He is, and you guys would know more than me. But as a general viewer of the show, I'm watching that going, this guy has no fucking mic skills whatsoever. Can he even do a podcast, let alone get out in front of people and talk? Because he just doesn't seem like he's a talker. So I don't know if you get him a mouthpiece or something, but my God, send that guy to promo school.
Yeah. I think the problem we're facing with Jungle Boy is that for far too long, he was treated as the second man in a comedy act. You know, he's stuff like, if you look at like the history of the AEW, their time to hotshot him as a legitimate main event contender was open, wide open, and they booked it well. If you look at the first, what was it the Christmas episode or New Year's, that first year in 2019 when he did the Broadway with Jericho on the first Texas episode of Dynamite. You know, he did the Broadway with Jericho and came off looking like $1 million because Jericho made him look like $1 million, which is what Jericho does. Let's be honest. He has made 9 out of 10 people he's worked with in AEW has been made a guy, but they followed that up with continuing with the Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus thing. And that was, you know, the height of the comedy era where they were still with Marco Stunt. I love Marco Stunt, but you know, his place was not with Jungle Boy if you're planning to book Jungle Boy as one of these 4 pillars to build the company on. And Jungle Boy does do great when he's working with someone who's sort of trying to build him up, which is what, you know, he needs. Like, if you look at some of the stuff he did with Christian, like Jared said, even some of those promos were damn good, you know, and those were Jungle Boy promos that I'm referring to were damn good. But now he's out there, he's being left without, you know, a
motivation.
He's left without a flotation device, for lack of a better phrase. Like, MJF is out there, and this is, you know, one of those things about MJF's character that I don't like. His promos are bury my opponent. You know, that's his style. That's his MO. It's to bury his opponent. Jungle Boy works best with an opponent who will build him up. Like, Christian built him up. You're a young talent. Your day will come, but it's not going to come at my expense. You know, that type of promo works best for Jungle Boy. You can't bury Jungle Boy and expect him to bury his way out of that. You need to be a CM Punk. You need to be a John Moxley who can just either talk his way out of it like Punk did, or be like, you, I don't care, like Moxley did. You know, like, it's the same with Regal. You know, he was able to play on MJF's level because he is just a phenomenally amazing talker. Jungle Boy doesn't have that. And I mean, I think it's very simple. We're still getting the 4-way, and it's very simple for me to book. I don't know how Jared doesn't see it. You were actually a booker for a long time. It's very simple. You do the tournament final, and instead of MJF interfering, it's Jungle Boy with a chair beating the piss out of everybody and saying, there, you can't have a winner now. And then from there, you build it back up, and then Tony can, you know, do one of his random appearances and say, fine, you don't want a tournament? You can all get in the ring, and you can all wrestle in the main event on May whatever in Las Vegas for the AEW World Championship in a fatal 4-way. It's very simple booking to get from there to there and make it work. But
sorry, go ahead.
But the thing is, you've got these guys who are, you know, better in the burying. You know, you've got 2 guys who bury, 1 guy who doesn't give a fuck, and 1 guy who is looking like he is drowning because he is trying to do what he's best at in an environment that doesn't suit him. You know, Darby's attitude is just, I don't care. I don't care. I'm Darby Allin. I don't care. I'm crazy. I'm Darby Allin. That's his style.
Well, you might not like it, but it works for him.
I'm not saying it doesn't work. Like I've said it from the jump. I think of the 4 pillars, Darby Allin is the one who doesn't win the world title.
So let me ask you guys this before you go any further. Okay, so MJF, what is he? Like, if you have to define MJF in one sentence, what is he?
The best young heel the business has seen in a very long time.
Jer?
Come again?
If you have
describe MJF in a sentence.
Yeah. Whether it's personality, physically, whatever.
The best talker in the business.
Okay, cool. MJF's taken care of. Darby Allin.
A guy you can believably get heat on. I mean, he fights from underneath better than anyone because he's a bump machine. You can beat the shit out of him and want to see him come back. He's got that Ricky Morton ability to connect with the crowd through getting his ass handed to him, and you want to see him come back every time. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't.
My MJF one, really, the backtrack would be, best talking heel in AEW, for sure. My Darby Allin one, you're going to see crazy shit every single time he's out there. Johnny, did you give Darby?
No.
Well,
but I can actually do it in one sentence because Jared doesn't play these games very well. Modern day Mick Foley.
Yeah, I mean, different physique for sure, but yeah,
I see that. Yep.
I don't think he's nearly as good as Mick was on the mic, but yeah. Sammy Guevara.
He has an ability. He has a very punchable face. I mean, that's it's a quality for a heel. He's a guy you want to punch. I mean, Shawn Michaels had the same thing. So
it's funny you say Shawn Michaels. For me, it's prima donna, sexy boy, high risk.
Oh, come on! You totally just stole my one sentence.
Did I?
you definitely you hinted at it there.
Well, prima donna, sexy boy, high risk taker. That's how I define him.
John? Well, my sentence is one simple because it's one sentence game. He's just a sexy boy.
Yeah. Okay. Jungle Boy. And don't give me anything with the Luchasaurus involved either.
Wasted potential.
A good fiery promo when he has something to work with. It's just not that often.
Man, well, you've seen more than I have. I haven't seen good promos from him. I've seen Christian carry him in a promo before, for sure. I'm sure he's had them, but I got nothing, guys. Like, for me, this was, I'm not saying it's his last chance ever, but in terms of making yourself and forcing yourself up higher on the card sooner and in being in, the main event or pre-main event territory, I got to tell you, I think that ship has sailed with him now, and he will go down somewhere mid-card. Well, probably upper mid-card with this split thing happening, but I don't know. I just, the other guys all like that, and I just don't know with him. Johnny, did you have one for him?
I did. I said wasted potential.
Wasted potential. And Jer was the
one of his long run-on sentences.
Good promo when he has something to work with, which, I mean, is fair. You do need,
Oh, absolutely.
Something. Okay, so if you want to see a great Jungle Boy promo, I think it was after Christian turned heel on him and absolutely murdered him with that concerto to the back of the head. Jungle Boy comes out a couple weeks later and is just
fiery,
just super pissed about it, and you can see it in his eyes, like he wants to kill Christian, and nothing is going to stop him from that. And I think it hurt Jungle Boy a little bit that the angle got cooled off, yeah, because Christian was hurt, and that's out of their hands. That's fine, but I mean, it's still
they made it work with the transition to Luchasaurus, though.
Yeah, and Luchasaurus is a tremendous big guy as someone to work with someone like Jungle Boy, because they've worked perfectly together. And it just sucks. It took an extra 3 months to get to the blow off, but they did, and it was fine.
I think, and this is straying from that topic a little bit, but I look at this Double or Nothing main event that's probably going to happen, the 4 Pillars thing, and I know it's hard to have a championship match like this all the time, but I feel like you should think there's some risk that the champion could lose in every big pay-per-view match, and I would have no problem betting everything I own on MJF is not losing a fatal 4-way match with those guys.
It's
book a strong enough undercard
time.
and you can get away with it. It feels like that situation, the time, what do they put there? I don't know, but
yeah, it's not their moment. They're gonna, this is their time to sort of, this is Tony saying that these guys are AEW. They are the future. And that's perfectly fine. That's acceptable. It's sort of akin to me, I guess the most prescient example for me would be Survivor Series 92. That was the first Brett Shawn world title match on pay-per-view and wasn't the main event because you had the Ultimate Maniacs, what was supposed to be, or not the Ultimate Maniacs, the Macho Maniacs, what was supposed to be, but then you had Macho Perfection against, which was Savage and Perfect against Flair and Razor. That was the main event that night, but you still had the world title match being, 2 guys who were going to be, the heartbeat of the company for the rest of the decade, basically.
Yeah, and everyone knows that show sold out because you had the nightstick on a pole match. Big Boss Man and Nails.
Hey, it did not. The main event, the sellout match on that was the coffin match with The Undertaker and Kamala.
R.I.P. to the Boss Man. Let me ask you this. Thus far in this little feud, and just quick one-word answer here, or one-name answer. Who, other than MJF, has come out looking the best so far? For me, it's Sammy.
Yeah, I'd go with Sammy. I think there's more potential there. They can play off each other a lot better.
Just got to stop fighting people backstage too. So,
yeah,
that just goes back to that punchable face.
Yeah, right.
It's probably Sammy, but if there's one thing I need, I need sidekick Sammy to die a horrible, painful death. I'm tired of it.
Oh, we talking about Mrs. Brendan Cutler with her Instagram post?
I have no idea what you're referring to.
Are you talking about Tay Mello? Is that where you're going with that?
No.
Oh.
Sidekick Sammy. I'm referring to him being the sidekick.
Oh,
he's Jericho's sidekick, and now he's MJF's sidekick. He's sidekick Sammy.
Yeah, was it Darby that brought that point up? He's always someone's side. Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, because Sammy brought up the him and Sting thing as Darby being, so.
Yeah, I mean, I hope he's not under Jericho's wing again for the next year and a half to 2 years. Get him out of there. Do him versus Jericho somehow.
I don't mind the association of the two because it does work. They do have just a phenomenally amazing chemistry together. So I have no issue with them being associated. It's the sidekick effect that I don't like,
He's in Jericho's shadow. And
exactly.
And unfortunately, the thing with Jericho is no matter who he's with, they're going to be in Jericho's shadow. And it's just by default. You're not going to outshine Chris Jericho, and even if it's not designed to be that way, the only
Daniel
guy.
Garcia.
Yeah, he had a chance. They totally fucked that up. But
much so.
And it's just you need to get away from Jericho to kind of find yourself in that sense, So Sammy
he still
better
had
off.
great feuds.
Oh
that,
yeah,
separated
for sure.
him. Like the Matt Hardy feud was amazing, and it separated him from Chris. But immediately right after that, he's right back to being
Well, he had
Chris's lackey.
He had one of the greatest ladder matches in history.
Yeah,
and he's still Jericho's lackey. So it just, I think Sammy and probably to a higher extent Daniel Garcia have eclipsed the Jericho Appreciation Society, and probably would be better off doing their own thing.
Daniel more so than Sammy. Like I think Sammy can stay as a single in the Jericho Appreciation Society because he does fit, and they don't have a secondary singles guy. But this whole Daniel Garcia, I'm a sports entertainer shtick got old like 4 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They wanted to see him turn, and they just didn't pull the trigger. And now, I mean, no offense to Garcia, but does anybody give a shit about Daniel Garcia right now? He's a guy.
I mean, I was very high on him earlier, and
now he's talented.
The stuff with Danielson was great.
His story is also phenomenal. You know, like when it inevitably happens, his world title program, wherever it is going to have great vignettes and great promos because they have that story and they've alluded to it so many times. But that story is a phenomenal story.
So, Jerry, you wanted to touch on this before we get out of here. Sammy and MJF.
I think they are probably going to carry this entire world title program because. Oh, did you hear that they paid for each other's blue check mark on Twitter? Great stuff.
Only one of them has the check mark.
Exactly. I mean, wonder why. Is MJF a cheapskate? And they had their first cat play date together last week too, because they both have cats. So like, this is the kind of stuff that you can do outside of TV that enhances both of their characters. You know, you can get away with doing this silly shit that people engage with. I mean, you're not going to get that stuff from Jungle Boy. You're going to get it from guys who have characters that they can portray outside of TV, right? So I think that is probably going to be the crux of this entire angle for the next 6 weeks. Are we going to slowly get a point where Sammy figures out, hey, this MJF guy is a real prick. He's using me. Or do they just play it off leading into the match, and then in the match, Sammy, decks him and they do it that way. But I'm excited to see these two play off each other for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, it should be interesting what they do. It's they're both charismatic, if nothing else. So Jer sent me this before going live that we'll end the show with. Okay, so had some time today. I'm piecing together the show, and I'm watching Andrew Zarian's thing. The guy seems pretty plugged in, and he I should have took a screenshot of it. Comes out with the old big gold, and it's just like pieces of paper taped over top of it. And yeah, I don't have anything positive to say about this, fellas. How about you guys?
This belt is why you don't put multiple belts in travel cases without putting them in individual bags. They will have unprotected intercourse with each other and make bastard belts like this. Seriously, why was Big Gold left alone with the Intercontinental title? This should not exist.
Yeah. So I get the idea that they're trying with this title. I don't hate it. I mean, I love Big Gold, so I'm not gonna hate the design of it, obviously. But
this is like mini gold. It's just
it's awkward. And I mean, obviously they didn't want to go back to big gold, one step forward, two steps back. But to their credit, at least it's a smaller WWE logo. I mean, those Universal and other titles are just
ungodly.
Yeah, I can't look at them. Because they're props for. They're not treated as championship belts. They're treated as props to do photo ops with whoever won the NBA title or whatever. Right? That's the purpose of those titles. This at least feels less like that and more of a wrestling championship.
It at least feels pro wrestling.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, yeah, the logo is whatever. And somebody edited it to they took the world, like the globe, out of the picture and added more kind of the gold from the outside towards the middle and just left the logo there, and it comes off a lot better, which I thought might have been an improvement. But yeah, I mean, it's okay, I guess. At least Raw, or well, maybe Raw. I don't know how the draft will shake out, but at least the second brand will have a world title for the first time in over a year. I mean, I'm getting sick of the U.S. title being the top belt because I can only take so much Bobby Lashley and Austin Theory in my life.
So I'm gonna get just killed for saying this, but I actually like Roman's belts better than that thing. That thing, like if that thing just would have been big gold coming back, I would have been like, yeah, okay, yeah,
for sure, yeah.
Or a more modern take on that, but it feels more like what Johnny said. It feels like the old IC belt, or at least the outline.
The new one. No, the new one.
See the outline of it though. If you look at the shape, reminds me of the old IC belt.
That was the last podcast.
It has that big gold shape to it, but it looks like the new IC belt, which,
Yeah, I don't know.
I've
had issues with that belt since it showed up.
Yeah, I don't
it feels dark. That like nothing sticks out on that belt. Like you can't. At first I thought it looked kind of cool just because it was so different from every other belt they had, but now it's like, that belt's kind of ugly. So.
It's not that it doesn't look good. Like it look like aesthetically, it's pleasing. Like to the eye, it's not an abomination. It's not an eyesore. It doesn't make me want to like I don't want to close my eyes every time it's on screen. But it looks like somebody made it in Photoshop. It looks like somebody resized the big gold main plates, pasted on the North American title globe, and then pasted the logo on top of that. And
can you read a single thing on the title? No.
Oh, you can't. You really can't. Like it looks like I made this belt in WWE 2K22.
Let me just say the soft core championship, which Johnny will get, looked a lot better than that thing. So, and that was made out of the cardboard, or not cardboard, sorry, Bristol board paper. So, and other things. Anyways, let's do some rapid fire with the chat before we get out of here. Really quick on the answers, guys. Let's go through it and then do our plugs.
Wait, what? I'm reading chat as we go, and that is just categorically incorrect, Wayne. This belt is not temporary.
Jesse says he'll be listening while he edits. You can check out Jesse's new YouTube channel, youtube.com/Storytime Spectacular. We're going to have a nice little bumper for that at the beginning of our videos moving forward. Big thanks for Jesse and the support that he provides the channel to be able to come out here and do this too. A wrestling show. So thank you to Jesse for helping us put this on. Matt Whitfield's here. That's unfortunate. Wayne Gotke, why does WWE have a third world title now?
They don't. They have a second world title now.
They should just call it the bronze title. Call it the bronze title. That's what it feels like.
Can Roman just get one belt, please? Like that would make this a lot easier to deal with.
Matt Whitfield says, so will Roman Reigns still be carrying two belts around? I think he should.
Yes.
Until he loses.
Exactly. It's the Chris Jericho effect.
100%. Plus, Paul Heyman
unified. Let's remember this, okay? The main event with Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania last year was a unification match. Those two belts were unified. This isn't one man holding two belts. It was two belts that were unified. He is the undisputed WWE Universal Heavyweight Champion. One belt, gaudy, long title, but it is one title reign. It is one belt, unified at whatever length he held the Universal title to. It's extended to it's backdated to his Universal title win.
You heard it here first. 1 + 1 = 1, says Johnny. Wayne Bucky, he can't figure out how to take the belt off Roman, and he has to get his 1,000-day reign, so they create a third belt. Dumb.
That's not a problem. Long title reigns are history. They're historical.
I think the problem was Triple H mentioning it and kind of hinting that, hey, we can't get anyone to beat Roman, so here's our secondary title
was
over here.
Stupid, and whoever wrote that for him needs to be fired. If he wrote it himself, he needs to stop writing promos.
Like, if you're going to do a separate thing, treat it as a separate thing. Roman does not exist in this world. That's the point.
WCW Saturday Night, where Glacier was born. He's literally the first person I think of.
Glacier was born on Nitro.
When someone talks about, he was on Saturday Night a lot, though.
He was on Saturday Night, but he was born on Nitro.
Weird, terrible-looking Star Wars video game doors.
Mm-hmm.
Man.
I love Mr. Glacier.
Matt says that's because those Jackson boys are whiny little bitches that are trying to dictate the future and push Tony in a certain direction. Well, as much as I might be on Team Punk,
that's why they're a one-time tag champion who's only had
two times.
You're right. Two-time champions for sub 100 days total. Yeah, definitely pushing themselves over everybody else.
Well, I don't think they need the belts. I mean, same with Kenny. Kenny got his one run.
What's their win-loss record in AEW? I'm betting it's below 500.
Yeah, I mean, there's other stuff that I think you could argue that they've had their.
I get that, but the narrative that they're pushing the direction towards themselves is, they put over. Was it top flight in the tournament?
He didn't say towards themselves. He said in a certain direction. To be fair,
let's be honest. We all know what that means. That certain direction is my way.
Well, yeah. I mean, Brandon Cutler has a job, and he should. So, I mean, let's be honest.
Brandon Cutler has a job because it's cheaper to pay him to be a job guy than it is to pay an actual job guy. They're already paying him the corporate job. Why not just let him wrestle too?
I'm gonna have to cut that. I'm definitely gonna have to clip that out.
The Young Bucks are like the Cincinnati Reds of AEW.
At the end of the day, hey, though, they're not just wrestlers.
Cincinnati Reds are the oldest team in Major League Baseball.
They're EVPs, for better or for worse. Yep. And it's kind of their job to push the company in a certain direction, whether you like it or not. I mean, I might not like it. I don't think talent should be EVPs. Well, but
they're not. I mean, is talent having an influence over a promoter a new thing in wrestling? Because
Bruiser Brody didn't dictate his booking. Hulk Hogan didn't dictate his bookings.
Exactly. Like
Ric Flair didn't dictate his bookings. Harley Race didn't dictate his bookings. Terry Funk didn't dictate his bookings.
Basically, this is
Vern Gagne didn't dictate his bookings.
AEW should buy the NWA and do something big with it.
No, they shouldn't. That brand is toxic.
They need to buy it and bury it. Billy Corgan can go fly a kite.
Wayne Gucky says he grew up on Gordon solely because I'm old as fuck. Johnny replied to him in the chat.
Fuck yeah.
Wayne Gucky says those old school announcers usually had a Scotch rocks in one hand and a cigarette in the other.
I would bet you any money.
Yeah, but they usually didn't start the show with 6 seats to the wind.
Yeah, Gordon Soley definitely had a bottle of scotch underneath the desk during those Continental TV tapings.
Oof, Continental. Good Lord.
Fuck off. It's great. Stud stable, baby.
Any bets on when
Flair about booking in a certain direction
will have his next farewell match?
Oh, never. Jesus. Flair just needs to go away. Like
I firmly believe he will do it again somewhere. I don't know where. Maybe Gerald book it.
He'll dig at a Denny's and fall on the
call
floor.
It his farewell match.
Yeah.
George says Ruthless Aggression era was the best.
Every generation before you would disagree with that statement, and just like every generation that follows us will disagree with that statement.
I don't think
the best generation is the one you were a fan of.
The Attitude Era
for guys like Jer and I, that encompasses a lot of eras. but
Sure.
whichever generation was your peak fandom is your era.
Last question here. I would love to see, or last, question. Would love
Comment,
to see
statement.
whatever. I'd love to see The Rock come back to fight Roman. If that does end up happening, I seriously hope it's not The Rock to go over him. That's just an insult to everybody else at the company.
Before they started pushing this 1,000-day title reign thing and him being unbeatable, yeah, I can see it. But now, I think they're smart enough to realize there's absolutely no value in putting Rock over Roman Reigns. And Rock would absolutely agree. He would come in there.
It's all in how they book it, because there is definitely a certain amount of money in a Rock versus Roman match, no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you build to it as that nobody can beat Roman Reigns, nobody in the WWE can beat Roman Reigns. You had to create a new belt because nobody could beat me. You locked me up on a show because nobody could beat me. Then, you hit Rock's music and comes out. Well, you're wrong because you've never fought me and I can beat you. I know I can beat you. You're not the head of the table. You're a poser. This is my table. I'm, $1 billion worth. This is my table and I let you sit at it. The promos would write themselves. The match would book itself. And then you have Roman go over and then...
You're giving The Rock too much credit on his promos. He'd be like, "You're a Rudy Poo, suck my shoe," and everyone would groan.
He'd have Brian write his promos for him. He'll be fine.
Big thanks to those who came out tonight. Catch us every Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern. We were a little late getting going tonight, but we also didn't really have extra hands on the Phantom Empire live show, so I was trying to promote and host at the same time, and that can be difficult. Plugs before we go. I'll do mine first. Friday night, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Overlook Drive-In returns. Most of the time, it's going to be pre-recorded moving forward. However, Mike and I happen to be available at the same time Friday night, 10 p.m. Eastern, ranking the Halloween theatrical movie posters. Join us. Give us your thoughts on the posters. Give us your lists and just hang out with us. Have a good time. You can also check out our other channels, The Legacy of Westeros. If you want Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon related content, or A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, or The Snow Show, which might get in us same day as AEW Collision. Check out The Legacy of Westeros. We also have The Legacy of Star Wars. That one's just in its infancy. Check that out as well. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Johnny, where can everybody find you? What do you got going on, man?
Oh, you can find me here, there, and everywhere. Like I said, we're in a holding pattern of Bros Before Pros as we wait for the new alpha to drop for 7 days today. Hopefully, that'll drop in about 2 weeks. I'm hoping. And then we'll be back on the grind with that content since saves aren't backwards compatible, so we'll have to start fresh. So I'm just biding my time.
Awesome, man. Good stuff. And that's over on Twitch. Bros Before Pros Gaming. Jer, how about you, man? What do you got going on?
I just uploaded a clip of AJ Styles practically dying in a ladder match over on the Dark Match Drive Facebook page. Plenty of content every day. All the wrestling you could want. There was videos of a guy being set on fire over the weekend. So if that's your thing, come check it out.
I saw that one. That was rough.
Yeah. Deathmatch wrestling. I've got views on that. So yeah, check us out on Facebook. We have a Discord. We do some live streams. We do live chats during Dynamite. We would do it during Rampage, but nobody watches Rampage.
At least nobody watches it live.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a Google Drive full of wrestling content. I just uploaded 100 issues of WWF's programs that they would sell at the arenas, covering 1984 to, I believe, 1988.
Holy crap, that's a deep pull.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. Everything.
Yeah.
Now and forever.
Yeah, I try to hit all the historical notes as well as some current wrestling, and yeah, it's a good time.
You can check us out on social media, Twitter at CSC Wrestling. Not much going on over there, but we'll grow as we go here. For Johnny and Jer, I'm Sean from At the Chat. I'm still Sean, and we'll see you next time. We'll see what happens on Dynamite and SmackDown and Rampage and whose house CM Punk shows up at next, and then whatever else happens. So have a great fucking week, everybody. Dark Match Drive, Bros Before Pros, Phantom Empire. Good night.
of the voiceless